Yeah, well, when it comes to the nation's productivity, mental health is a major workplace issue. Last year, the federal government announced that work-related illnesses cost this economy $60 billion a year. There's an obvious cost to employers when employees are on sick leave and take extended leave absences from work, but there's also a personal cost to employees who struggle to remain in the workforce. Here to tell us more is our regular guest, commentator Joydeep Kaur, Managing Principal of People and Culture Strategies. Good morning, Joydeep. Good to have you. Yeah, how would you, from your line of work and the businesses you're working with, how would you describe how the employers are actually affected when you've got employees in this situation of needing to deal with mental health issues?
Yeah, it's a really important issue. What we're seeing as we're working with our clients, as we would in the ordinary course of helping them solving their problems, and for example, you've got an employee who is perceived to be an underperformer, or for example, you've got an employee who's starting to take a little bit more sick leave, but there doesn't seem to be anything physically wrong with them. The employer starts to perhaps manage that particular employee, starts to have some conversations with that employee, and then all of a sudden there's a revelation that that employee has been suffering from depression or anxiety or any number of other things. Now, when the employer finds that out, the employer's kind of stuck, because it may be that any steps that the employer takes could actually exacerbate that condition, but by the same token, if the employer doesn't do anything, it could be having an impact on that employer's organisation.
And not to be cynical, but in terms of the legalities of this, if someone is an underperformer and then they reveal to their employer they have mental health problems, I mean, can that be for the employee a get-out-of-jail-free card in terms of performance management, or the company saying pick up your act?
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it's used as a sword or a shield, or whether as I'm sure it is in the majority of instances, and I know it is in the majority of instances, it is quite genuine, because there's a lot of data that the psychological impact of people actually talking about these things is that the majority of people are going to be reluctant to be open with their employer about it. So it's understandable.
Is anyone legally obliged to actually reveal that if they don't want to?
No, they're not. And an employer...
not legally obliged, but in that conversation that you've just talked about, when the conversation comes up of managing the performance, there's no kind of obligation to...
No formal obligation on the employee's part, but the employer, if they were being advised to manage it properly, would, as a matter of fairness, want to understand whether there are any legitimate explanations for the perceived underperformance or whatever it is. So it is a very difficult one, and the other challenge in all of this is that employers, once they hear that, the majority of employers in this country wouldn't really know what to do. So a lot of them would just back off straight away, because they would be apprehensive of legal claims, asserting discrimination or any number of other things. And then the impact flows to other people perhaps within the organisation, because the employer might respect the privacy of that particular issue with the affected employee. But then all of a sudden the co-workers, who might not have the insight, are seeing, or again themselves perceiving, that the employer is letting this particular employee get away with a lot. So that the need for an effective strategy around dealing with this is really important, and so you need to deal with it on a case-by-case basis, but employers need to better understand what's the scope of their powers here, and indeed what are the scope of their obligations when it comes to the employees. If someone does have a mental health condition, it should be treated, in my view, in exactly the same way as a physical health condition. Ultimately, employees have responsibilities to perform a job. If for whatever reason an employee is unable to perform that job, then the employer has to think about the suitability for alternative duties, or, in a worst case scenario, whether the employee needs to be moved on. All of that can be handled sensitively and delicately and supportively, but I think the worst thing that an employer can do is do nothing.
Yeah, because then there is a potential for legal claims to actually come up. I mean, do you see examples of that quite often? I've got to be brief here, but...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Risk of legal claims, but also the risk that the employee actually gets worse because no one's taking responsibility for this issue.
Sure, and it affects the rest of the team, as you were just saying as well.
The whole organisation.
Joydeep Kaur, thank you so much. From People and Culture Strategies, appreciate it. Yeah, big productivity issue there, just in light of the bigger conversation happening by the BCA today. We're talking about oil when we come back from this break. No, we're going to go there right now. Fantastic. There's the oil price right now. I think I've gone far too over time to actually go to that break. 105.23, Brent at 107. So let's head over to the NYMEX in New York. Jeffrey Grossman from BRG Brokerage. Jeffrey, fantastic to talk to you. Understand there was quite a range in the oil price that you witnessed today.
Oh,